Hey guys, welcome back. Or if you're new here, then just welcome. This is The Constant Show where we talk about movies. This week, though, it's going to be a little bit different. Mainly because, instead of doing what I do normally, where we go through like the plot or the cinematography or like the character work or the individual elements that make a thing what it is, I would actually like to question the narrative this week. So, in universe, in Scooby Doo Zombie Island, none of the evidence of the supernatural stuff actually makes it out of the supernatural area. So, we're going to be taking the stance of pretty much an accusatory lawyer as we kind of go through the events. And in case you haven't seen it in a while or you need a refresher, I'm going to include one of those. Hello, viewers. I ask you to consider what happened on Moonscar Island with a clear heart and an open mind. To look past the narratives presented to you by Miss Daphne Blake and her reenactment of quote-unquote Zombie Island. To use your critical thinking skills to ask the larger questions. Miss Blake would have you believe that her mystery gang reunited with the express purpose of solving mysteries. For Miss Blake's television show, Haunted America. That her and the mystery gang just so happened to bump into Lena Dupree at an outdoor market, who just so happened to in turn work at a haunted house. That afterwards, werecat people used voodoo to subdue them until the inept Shaggy Rogers and Scoobert Doo inadvertently rescued them. That their captors vanished into thin air alongside Confederate pirate zombies. That the actual untampered footage of what happened on Moonscar Island is in the bottom of some swamp. Well, I ask you, what really happened on Moonscar Island? Daphne Blake said on live television, quote, "The monsters and ghosts always turned out to be bad guys in masks. That's the reason that the mystery gang broke up. I'd like you to keep that in mind for later." She went on to say, "This time, I intend to find some real haunted houses for my viewers." Doesn't sound like Daphne Blake was looking for the truth. Sounds like she was looking for ratings. Who could blame Velma for wanting a more exciting life? Watch this interview in her bookstore, lamenting that selling mysteries isn't as fun as solving them. Shaggy and Scoober did. "Looks like we're unemployed again, old pal." Shaggy said that to Scooby after they were fired for the 15th time. They were just looking for a meal. Important to note that none of this trio's lives were impacted in the slightest by going on a cross-country ghost-busting tour. Velma could just uproot next day. Shaggy and Scooby? Fine, let's go. I ask you, who's paying the bill for these adventures? Can't be Fred Jones. Velma's not selling any books, and Shaggy and Scoober don't even have a job. You know who does have money? Miss Blake. She inherited a fortune. Seems like she's probably the one putting gas in the mystery machine. Just like the good old days, according to Velma. Too much like the good old days, Daphne Blake would tell her. I have a TV show to do. What part of it was too much like the good old days? Part where you maybe discovered the truth? Unmask a bad guy? Is that the part that's too much? The court record will show that Daphne Blake's TV show is called Haunted America, not Fraudulent America. Although, after the events on Haunted Island, maybe it should have been. What should be clear to you by now is that each and every member of this group has a reason to lie. Daphne wants the second season of her TV show. Fred's dependent on it. He works as the producer. We've also had an unspoken Ross and Rachel thing for at least 40 years in media. It's a pretty strong relationship. Velma knows how important this is to the group. Quote Daphne Blake in her interview. That's why the gang broke up. Shaggy and Scoobert? They just want to eat. You eat a lot better on that Blake fortune than you do working minimum wage jobs with your talking dog. I want a real live ghost. Quote Daphne Blake. I need a real live haunted house. I work at one, Lena Dupree says. Which is interesting, because as far as the court record goes, she doesn't work at a haunted house. She works at a private island, correct? Private estate, maybe? an owner's occupants. Most certainly not a financially funded haunted house. That's what Miss Daphne Blake would have you believe. Snakebite, who is a fisherman, rescues Shaggy and Scooby from the water. He says, "I hate tourists." He hates tourists. How often does he encounter them in the water surrounding a private island? Not often, I guess. How many tourists can there actually be out there looking for the giant fish with him? One. I wasn't exaggerating when I said they were the hottest peppers in Louisiana. That's Simone Lenore advertised. Shaggy and Scoobert rummaged through the kitchen, encountering peppers, something that Lena Dupree would have advanced knowledge about, meeting them at the market when they were already eating a sandwich which contained peppers. She knows they have insatiable appetites, that they'll eat anything you put in front of them. The rest of the gang had lemonade in the living room. It's interesting that the ghosts only seem to occur after each member of the gang has ingested food provided by the household. Blake would have you believe that a ghost carved the wall because Shaggy and Scoobert seen it. Despite both of them having demonstrated hyperactive imaginations over 40-plus adventures, the wall is carved in front of them. Is this great stuff or what, Daphne Blake says? Our first real encounter with the supernatural. It's a pretty bold assertion, especially this early in the case. I mean, they've seen holograms before. They've seen artificial intelligence. They've seen minor 49ers and black monk monsters. All of them turned out to be fake. But suddenly Daphne Blake has a hunch that this haunting is real. This haunting that's going to benefit me is real. Keep rolling, Fred. Maybe we'll have another ghostly manifestation. And what do you know, Daphne Blake's uncanny intuition is suddenly right as Velma gets levitated. We've been levitated before, Fred says, and he's right, they have. There's always wires or some contraption or some magnets. Velma says there were no wires. Are we to believe Velma or the laws of physics? There's been a lot of books written about physics. Not a single one written about Velma. It just keeps getting better and better, Daphne Blake says. Velma wouldn't want to ruin that. So maybe there were no wires. Maybe it felt like there weren't no wires. Neither would Fred. He had the footage of the entire incident. But before anybody in the group could witness what actually happened on film, Fred had to make some edits. He had to adjust the contrast and the brightness and the sharpness. But suddenly, what do you know? There's a ghost in Fred's footage. How did that get there? How did Fred not notice that that was there until he showed it to the rest of the group? Another question. Why does Fred slam the camera before the group can see the levitation? It just keeps getting better. Quote Daphne Blake. Wouldn't you want to see the best part? Wouldn't you want to know for certain whether or not Velma had been levitated, or if it was magnets, or maybe there was a wire that you could see? Or maybe they weren't even off the ground, because they drank the lemonade at the estate. It's probably just a hologram or a guy in a pirate suit, Fred says. Then why did it only show up on tape, Daphne Blake asks. Velma says that's the mystery. Velma Dinkley. She's a smart girl. She knows what's going on. Fred's footage didn't have a ghost. Fred did some tinkering. Now there's a ghost on the footage. She knows it's fake. She's seen Photoshop. Solved how many mysteries? Unmasked how many bad guys? What do you do when your financial provider is at risk? Their TV show stops happening, the game breaks apart. What do you do in that situation? Maybe you fudge the truth a little bit. Early on, Velma knocked on a wall. She was content that it wasn't hollow. Later on, after the footage incident, Velma knocks on that same wall, and suddenly she's so certain in the outcome that she's willing to peel the paint off the entire wall. Lena Dupree sees this happening, comes in carrying a tray of drinks. Not a single drink shakes. Tells me she wasn't the least bit surprised to see this. She should be. If she's a weird cat person who's on the run from some Moonscar pirates, why would she want them to know about it? Why would she want them to have express knowledge? As a matter of fact, why would the ferry worker early on warn them that people who go into the bayou don't come out? If he's in on it too. Fred offers up another mundane explanation for what's happened. Daphne Blake folds her arms over her chest in defensive body language. Even the tease of a mundane solution is a threat to her. Scooby and Shaggy encounter a pirate zombie in a grave after eating a gluttonous amount of food. Nobody else can verify this account. The event itself doesn't even make sense. Shaggy needed Scooby to stand 3/4 of the way up so that he could climb off his head to get out of this hole. The same hole that just minutes later, Shaggy would reach down and grab a cowering Great Dane by the tail and pull it up with ease. A Great Dane that weighs at least 80 pounds. You've seen Shaggy's arms. I don't think he could pull 80 pounds up over 10 feet, especially not crouch down to grab it. They would also testify that Bo's eyes were white. It's interesting because they're not. His irises have color. So what were they seeing when they were in that hole? What were they under the influence of? Lena assigns everybody to their rooms. And what do you know? Another ghost pops out for Shaggy and Scooby. This is the third phenomenon that is specific to the most overly paranoid people in our group. Consecutively. It's almost like it's orchestrated. Probabilistically, we should see an equal number of phenomena across all members of our group, but we don't. 1, 2, 3, Shaggy and Scooby. Fred removes his ascot. He specifically considers the action and puts it back into his dresser. I think this provides us insight into Fred's mind state here. Fred with an ascot? He's the competent trap master detective of the mystery gang. Fred without his ascot? He is Daphne Blake's silent producer. Maybe Fred didn't plan on solving mysteries that night. Maybe there was a part of him that wanted to, until Daphne Blake said, "For once, can't you accept there's a mystery that doesn't have a rational explanation?" Which are curious words from somebody who works for the mystery gang. Somebody who has solved 400 plus mysteries that all had rational explanations. But this one doesn't. Daphne Blake saying, "Believe me, this mystery that benefited me in every way possible is true." In their testimony, they say that Simone said there were Confederate barracks on Moonscar Island. We looked into it. We looked into every account there was of Moonscar Island. Not a single one of them, outside of Daphne's reenactment, mentions a Confederate barracks on that island. Well, if there's no Confederate barracks, where did the Confederate zombies come from? We should do a piece on Lena's pie. That's Fred Jones after multiple ghost phenomena has occurred. It's not bothered. Not enough to stop shilling for Lena Dupree and Simone Lenore's haunted house. Why is he suddenly more concerned with dessert than the truth? He tries to return to the hunt for truth. Daphne says, "Save your suspicions for later." When precisely would Daphne Blake have us wait? Return to Zombie Island? When we find out that swamp gas is actually what happened here? Allegedly? Either way, Fred and Daphne encounter a zombie. We have an interesting back and forth in the official record. Quote Daphne Blake, "If it's a mask, it's a good one." She was certain of it, positive. Quote Fred Jones, "It is the fakest, cheesiest mask I have ever seen." They're both mask experts. Why is there this discrepancy between them? They should agree, shouldn't they? They've been on how many adventures together where they shared the exact same suspicions that were warranted in the exact same ways? How can the disparity between their opinions be so large? Maybe one of them was being honest. Have to ask yourself which one that was. Must be animatronic, Fred says. Are they all animatronic? Daphne responds as more of them come out of the water. Fred says it's a possibility, and honestly, it is. As has been previously established, they've already seen sentient robots causing mayhem. Shouldn't even be a surprise at this point for how many times it's happened. It's a surprise to Daphne. She says, "You're not a skeptic, Fred. You're in denial. And I would love to keep talking to you about the official narrative. But at this point in the story, all actual evidence leaves the story. All evidence that we never got to see. And then suddenly, what do you know, the story becomes so much more fantastic. Suddenly there's Confederate pirate zombies. Suddenly there's werecat people and voodoo rituals. And suddenly the fairy worker's in on it. So I ask you to reconsider a question from earlier. What tourist is Snakebite referring to? Perhaps the ones that attend Simone Lenore's haunted house. For her world's hottest chili peppers and her delicious pie and her Confederate ghost zombies. Which of the following seems more likely to you? A, that after years of debunking paranormal activities, the mystery gang finally ran into one that was real. Or B, that it isn't real. That Daphne Blake has a financial motivation to lie. That everyone involved has a financial motivation to lie. Bo, our on-the-scene detective, happens to be a mystery writer himself. And what do you know? He too just so happened upon this mystery. He too just so happened to discover the same set of events that Daphne Blake would be talking about on season 2 of her TV show. I think the only real question is to what degree the other members of the mystery gang were involved in this. I think it's pretty obvious that Fred himself is complicit in almost everything that happens. If I had to give my guess towards it, I would say that him and Daphne had an agreement early on. He'd make it difficult, but eventually difficult wasn't enough. And sometime between him losing that camera and him going back to the mainland, he had a complete change of disposition. One has to wonder what Daphne Blake told him during that time to change his mind. I think Velma wanted to believe. I think she knew it was important to her friend. I think she knew it was the only way that the mystery gang could actually stay together, and that's what she wanted the most. This is the same Velma that held onto a box of Scooby snacks that entire time, holding out for the possibility that the mystery gang would return. And Shaggy and Scooby? Well, it's pretty clear. Throughout the entire story, all they wanted was a meal. Every line in their testimony either relates to food or the fear of it not being there. Well, when's the food not there? Food's not there when Daphne Blake doesn't get season 2 of Haunted America. You wouldn't even really need their complicit involvement in this to pull it off. They're already the two most fearful people in the entire world. And on top of that, being drugged. They consumed the most food and somehow saw the most ghosts. What a weird coincidence. Coincidence perhaps, and maybe Daphne Blake decides that she's going to team up with a haunted house. She knows that Velma, Shaggy, and Scooby are too effective at solving mysteries. Velma intentionally, Shaggy and Scooby unintentionally. So she has to sandbag them a little bit. They have to be a little bit drugged. That plus the peer pressure that Daphne Blake provides throughout the entire set of events. I need a real-life ghost. I intend to find real haunted houses. Too much like the good old days. I've got a show to do. Daphne Blake never went into that swamp looking for the truth. She went in there looking for a story. And I ask you, why should we believe the one that she came back with? Thank you for listening. I hope you had a good time. This has been The Constant Show. We'll be back to normal business probably next week. So,
like, comment, subscribe.
Like, comment, subscribe.
In the Twilight Zone.